Welcome, viewers and listeners, to the Total Football Analysis EPL podcast. We are the Thinking Fans podcast. Each week, we get together with our besties, who are current pro players, real coaches, academics, and stat heads. We are sponsored by the Premier League Guide, a 300-page guide of the season created by a team of 15-plus writers and designers. Moneyball for football, analytics plus opposition analysis plus eye candy. The next update will be released on December 5th at www.thinkingfanmedia.com and on Amazon. Today, we're joined by soccer analyst Harshal Patel. Also on the pod is professional footballer Dre Fortune. I am host Chris Mumford, known as the Professor. Bella ciao. During week 10, the standings are starting to take a familiar shape. Yes, the usual suspects are gathering at the top of the table, with a couple of surprises mid-table and beyond. We recap Chelsea, Tottenham, MANU, Southampton, Leeds, Everton, Liverpool, Brighton, Arsenal, and Wolves, amongst others. We consider upcoming Champions League fixtures and preview Week 11 matches, including MANU, West Ham, Chelsea, Leeds, Tottenham, Arsenal, and Liverpool and Wolves. Well, Harshal, why don't you give us our take on probably the biggest showcase of the week, which is the Chelsea-Tottenham game?
Yeah, definitely was the biggest game of the weekend, but I mean, a lot of fans and viewers might have found it disappointing in terms of it didn't live up to the hype from an entertainment point of view. Obviously, a nil-nil draw, and it wasn't one of those nil-nil draws where you feel like, hey, you know what, there was a lot of entertainment. Teams could have scored, but they didn't, and it ended up goalless. This was actually a pretty dour game. It was quite similar to Chelsea's game against Man United a few weeks ago at Old Trafford, which also finished in a goalless stalemate. And that's something interesting to take away because Frank Lampard, I think, has been looking for a balance between the attacking side and the defensive side of things for his team. And obviously, we all know about the attacking talent he has at his disposal this summer with all the players that have come in. But Chelsea struggled defensively last year. They conceded 54 goals in the league. So that is an area that he wanted to tighten up. And I think we're starting to see that in the bigger games, in the games against teams where Chelsea could conceivably concede goals. He's starting to put safety first as the default option rather than going for it. And Mourinho, on the other hand, was always going to, sit back and look for a goal on the counter. What's interesting from a tactical point of view, at least, is that uh, Spurs did this in the game against City as well last week, where Moussa Sissoko and Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, who were the two central midfielders, were dropping back into the back line to form a sort of back six. Not exactly, but the reason for that was that City really looked to stretch the play and then get the sort of number eights who are the likes of Kevin De Bruyne, Ilkay Gundogan into those central areas and making runs into the box, or being able to find the likes of Gabriel Jesus making runs into the box. And the reason why Mourinho put those players back into the back line was so that the fullback could go out and engage the opposite fullback or winger if needed, while there's still space between the fullback and the centre back, where on the right hand side, for example, Sissoko has dropped in. Mourinho did the exact same thing um, against Chelsea last night, where Sissoko was basically, when when Chelsea had the ball, Sissoko was basically playing as the right-sided centre half. He was tracking Timo Werner and making sure that Werner was not in space, so that Serge Aurier could then shut down Ben Chilwell. Mourinho had identified that Chelsea's left-hand side was the more dangerous side, and he worked to shut that down. And I thought that maybe Lampard could have been a bit braver with his positioning in terms of maybe asking Tammy Abraham to move further to the right, and then that would drag Werner there, which would then obviously force Sissoko to move across and create space. But he didn't do that. So that told me that he was Lampard at least was happy with the point, as was Mourinho. And I guess it's okay because this isn't a season where you need 95 plus points to win the title. 85 maybe will be enough. So it's okay to drop more points this season. And a draw is a good result against a big six team this year, which is what we saw from those two.
So, Dre, what was your take on the game?
Well, I mean, I agree with most of what Harshal has to say in terms of the tactical setup and whatnot. I don't know that I don't know that I'd say that Lampard was happy with the point. I think for me, he made his substitutions a bit late on in terms of, you know, he brought on Giroud, he brought on Havertz. I think he and Pulisic as well. I think he could have done that a little bit sooner to try to change things up a bit, because I think the game was pretty stale through most of the second half. But I think that's a game that, you know, you want to win. Tottenham's on top of the table, and they're a team that you think are going to challenge at this stage, and you're at home. And to be honest, I think that even in the end, Chelsea could have ended up losing. I think Tottenham was pretty confident in what they were doing, and they looked to hit them on the break, and there were a couple of chances late on in the game where Chelsea was a little shaky, including even one that Zuma just literally gave to them on top of the box. But it was a tough game to sit down and watch all the way through, just in terms of, you know, the entertainment value. But yeah, I mean, I think an even goalless draw is
yeah. I guess it wasn't surprising, the possession, right? Chelsea, we expected more possession. They had 60%. And the shots on target, Chelsea had 10 compared to Tottenham 6. There were only 4 shots on goal. And expected goals was 1.5 to 0.4 in Chelsea's favor. I felt that there was a lot of work being done for really not much in the boxes. And Dre, I want to hear your point on this. There were a few crosses where Abraham just wasn't able to handle the crosses effectively. I wonder if Giroud coming in, like you had mentioned, maybe 10 or 15 minutes earlier, that's kind of Giroud's MO, right? He does that for France. And I have to tell you, watching Cavani do that in an earlier game, where you bring in the seasoned striker that understands the pace of the run. And I'd love to hear from a player's perspective how you develop that pace of the run, in addition to whether you think that Giroud deserves any more playing time.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Giroud brings a different element into the game than Tammy Abraham has, just with his physical presence, and with his years of experience, he's obviously going to, you know, see things developing a little bit differently than Tammy may see them. And, you know, that will cause for, you know, he might be in a certain area of the box when Tammy might not be, and vice versa. So I think personally, I would have liked to see him come on a little bit sooner, just because in a game against a team the way Tottenham set up, sometimes that's just what it takes. Sometimes there's going to be a cross into the box, and it just requires a striker to kind of make something happen out of nothing. And I think Giroud's done that for, you know, all of his career, and shown that he's a guy inside the box who can make a lot out of nothing. So yeah, I would have liked to see him come on a little bit sooner.
And just to follow up on from a player perspective, you know, there's that time where you don't overrun the pass, particularly when you're going on goal. How does one develop that, and kind of what have your experiences been?
For me, it's just repetitions and just consistently doing it over and over again. And sometimes, to be honest, it's just not going to work. Sometimes, you know, you'll still be on a different wavelength than your teammates. But I think for the most part, it's just the repetition and just getting the reps in training, and having an understanding with the guys that you're playing with. And that just kind of leads to, you know, okay, for example, Chilwell likes to do this when he's about to cross. He likes to, you know, drop the shoulder and push left. Maybe he takes an extra touch, and just knowing these kind of things helps you to develop your runs and your movements. And then, you know, once you end up on the same page, it's like clockwork.
I got you. All right. Well, let's go ahead and turn our attention to the next match. Was the Man United Southampton game. You know, that game really, for the first 70 minutes or so, struck me as Man United getting increasingly frustrated, Southampton being really savvy on some set pieces, a corner in particular to the near post, and then a shot that went over the wall to the near post, and was really inch perfect, and De Gea ended up getting injured in his thigh or knee on that. Harshal, walk us through a deeper dive into that match.
Yeah. Obviously, it's a classic Man United trope now where Fergie time and all of that, that United will always usually come back from like a goal down or 2 goals down and score to win or draw the game. But I thought this was actually, obviously that did apply here as well, but United actually didn't play too badly, because in the first half as well, they, for long periods of time, I mean, Southampton are renowned as a high pressing side, a team that is really intense off the ball, doesn't give you time. United were out pressing Southampton. They managed to win the ball back from Southampton multiple times in dangerous areas. And if United's finishing was better in the first half, they could have been 2-0 up. There was a chance that Greenwood missed, even though he went round the goalkeeper, but shot wide into rather than into the open goal. And another one where the ball was given up and he shot straight at the keeper, and then Fernandes following up was saved really well by Alex McCarthy. So had those two chances been taken, United would have been 2-0 up. They were, I thought they looked the more dangerous side, but you can't really, and Ole said this in the post-match as well, like you can't really stop set pieces like that. I mean, yes, the defending could have been much better for the corner, and Fred should not have given away that free kick, but we've spoken about James Ward-Prowse's ability on earlier episodes as well. He is, I think, the best dead ball specialist in England at the moment. He reminds me, he's so reminiscent of David Beckham in terms of the whip and the power that he gets on his set piece deliveries. And it was the same thing, right? Where 2 set pieces, Southampton were 2-0 up. And I was really happy with the fact that Solskjaer made his changes proactively. Obviously, Henderson needed to come on at halftime due to the injury to De Gea, but he brought Cavani on. And I mean, it was just a masterclass in movement for all 3 goals, because obviously he was switched on. He was ready to make the move for both goals where he scored, but also for the goal that he assisted for Fernandes. He'd gone out to the right because Donny van de Beek and Fernandes were central. Rashford was coming in from a central position, so he knew that there's no point in staying central because there are 3 players there. The space is out wide. He pulled out wide. Van Bissaka played the pass to him, and then he had the composure to pick out Fernandes in the box. So, as we said earlier, those instincts in the box and the years of experience that he has, that just shone through. And I mean, it's high time, I think, that Solskjaer begins to start him in the league.
Right, well, what's your take? I mean, earlier we were alluding to Giroud. I mean, Cavani is, I mean, it's just, he comes on, correct me, he has 15 or 20 minutes and has an assist and 2 goals. I mean, do we need any more evidence? How is it that he knows where to be at the right place, the right time?
Yeah, I mean, he's just been playing for years. he's been around for a very long time. He's been doing it for a very long time. So, I mean, it's exactly what you could have asked from him in that moment, and he goes on and delivers. And I mean, in fairness, I think some players work best in those kind of situations. I mean, I think even with Giroud at Arsenal at times, I thought that him coming off the bench with 20, 30 minutes to go was like his role, where he would come on and he would pose as, a huge obstacle for defenders and make things happen. I think for me personally, I kind of like that role for Cavani for Man-U. I don't know if you get the exact same out of him if he starts. Maybe you do. I'm not sure. But he came on and he changed the game for them, and obviously they end up winning 3-2, and they're fantastically happy about that. But just to ask you, Harshal, even, do you think that after this game, how do you feel about the team? Because for me personally, I feel as though they kind of got lucky and got away, just from the sense of even on a different day, I think Southampton closes out the game, but against a better team, I don't see that happening. I think they, I think Southampton just fall apart, and we're looking at this completely differently if it finishes 2-0, 2-1, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, Southampton did fall apart towards the last 20 minutes or so, and Hasenhüttl said that post-match as well, that they did fall off a little bit physically. And then obviously it's the quality of the bench, right? Like United can bring on someone like a Cavani off the bench, which Southampton don't have. But I think, I mean, United actually played well, because yes, first half they didn't take their chances, but they created those chances in the first place. And I was impressed by the fact that they managed to press Southampton and get and regain possession in dangerous areas, and also be able to sort of restrict Southampton as well. From I can't really remember Southampton creating too many chances in the game other than the ones they created in the first half. And there was a bit of a 20-minute spell in the second half when the second half started where they were a bit on top. But other than that, I thought United actually dominated the game, created a bunch of chances first half, and then obviously the ones that they took in the second half. So I don't think there's too much for Solskjaer to be disappointed about, rather other than obviously the concessions of the goals. But I think I would say that Cavani should begin to start now, because obviously we heard that Martial is ill. We don't know whether it's COVID, but if it is, then straight away there's a spot up there. But also that instinct isn't there in the other players. And I saw a brilliant example of that in this game as well, where there was a cross that came in and Rashford was on the edge of the box. Fernandes and Van de Beek had made the runs in, but Rashford was on the edge of the box because he was expecting Telles to play it to his feet. And Rashford obviously is a wide attacker, but I think as an attacker, as a striker, your first instinct should be to make the run into the box. Rashford hasn't developed that yet. Martial also is someone who looks to come short. Usually, they do obviously make runs in behind, but Cavani's movement is just, I mean, it's been not just this game, wherever he's played in the Champions League and in other Premier League games off the bench, his movement has been absolutely impeccable. And that's what gets him the goals. You know, he's always scores from usually in the box, and it's because of his movement. So I expect him to begin to start. I don't know if United are gonna still stick to the diamond in midfield, which is what they played in this match. But Van de Beek also had a really good game. So I'll be honest, I can't see United, for example, missing Paul Pogba right now, because it looks like it's a bit more of a team without him. And I'm not saying that he can't come into the team and make it better, but at the moment, it looks like some of the parts are gelling better without him. So, and he has an injury. We don't know when he'll be back, but it does look like this could be a good base, with Fred and Matic and Fernandes and Van de Beek in midfield.
Trey, what do you think of Van der Beek? Is he the right guy at the right place right now?
I think it's a bit, for me, I think it's a bit soon to say. I mean, we always hear players talking about, the adjustment time period when they're coming to the Premier League. So I think, you still give him, everybody's different, but I think you give him till the end of the season at least, and then you kind of look back and you give him a full preseason again and see what happens. But I mean, I like him so far. I think he's done quite well. I agree. I think he had a good game against Southampton as well. So it's just only time will tell, I guess. Yeah,
I was struck by how I do think I'm inclined to agree with Harshal. There seems to be more cohesiveness. Greenwood seemed to be struck me as wanting to really make his mark, and there are a couple opportunities that he jammed some shots right into some defenders as fairly easy blocks when there was someone to the right or to the left of him 5 or 10 yards where he could have laid it off. And hey, strikers got to eat, they got to get fed. But I just feel that there's maybe a little bit of maturing to that process. I will say in Southampton's defense, I've got a 4-letter solution to them, and that's Ings, right? I mean, their build-up looked solid, their midfield looked solid, but just that final touches and really creating dangerous opportunities. If you miss a player like that, unlike a Liverpool or Man-U, where you just have a Cavani or a Giroud that you could just bring off the bench, I mean, they're going to be missed a lot. So I still get the sense that Man-U is the parts are still less than the sum of all those parts. So we'll see. I don't think they're out of the woods yet, though. Hey, a win is still a win, right? You have to play the full regulation, and that's ended up what happened there. Let's turn our attention to one of the more intriguing elements or matches of the weekend, which is the Leeds Everton game. Harshal, help us unpack that.
Leeds, surprisingly enough, have kept 2 clean sheets in 2 games now, even after having conceded, a lot of goals in the first few games. So that's an
They're
improvement.
tied for the most clean sheets in the Premier League right now.
Yeah, and you wouldn't have expected that from the way they started the season with the number of goals they were conceding. I mean, in fact, I think they've conceded the second highest number of goals in the league behind West Brom. They've conceded 17, West Brom are on 18. So you would think that. I'm really impressed by the fact that Bielsa has managed to have some sort of defensive improvement over the last 2 games. And bear in mind that these are 2 good teams, right? They've kept clean sheets against Arsenal and now Everton. So there's some good work going on from a defensive point of view. But again, high energy game, and I was really impressed with. And I think most of people who watch Leeds, for the first time at least, this guy might go under the radar, but Matthias Klick in midfield, he's everywhere. Gets back to defend. He's on the edge of the box taking shots. He goes out to the wide areas to create overloads, and those overloads that they created were crucial. I mean, before the goal that Rafinha scores from outside the box, it's a great finish, but it's created by the fact that Leeds had 5 players on the right doing, obviously, building up, and then the ball gets played across to Rafinha, who's in space, because Everton have got 6 players out there defending, and James hasn't tracked back. So Rafinha is in space. He has the time to pick up, take a touch, line his sights, and take a shot which goes in. So that those wide overloads were crucial. And I think Matthias Klick, he's hugely underrated, but everybody talks about Calvin Phillips, and I think this was one of his best games in the league so far in terms of the passing and the distribution. But Klick literally is the guy who makes them click, I think, in midfield.
Well, I don't know how or if it's possible for us to unpack this, but Leeds is tied for first in the most clean sheets. They are second most goals allowed. If you look at Koch, Cooper, Dallas, Alaski, and Ailing, they're all in the top 25 best defenders in terms of successful defensive actions per 90. So it seems to me when things go well with Leeds defensively, they go really well. When things go badly, they go really badly. That's probably the only way I can explain that. Harshal, do you have a take on that?
Yeah, and I mean, a big reason for that is the fact that they play man-to-man, right? So when you're playing a man-to-man system, if you lose your man, I mean, that's it, right? You're very likely to concede goal-scoring chances, and that's what happens with Leeds. That if there is an overload, or if due to whatever reason a player makes a mistake and that exposes the defense, it does usually lead to a goal-scoring chance because it is man-to-man. So that's the danger of playing a man-to-man system, and that's what's happened with them.
Dre, have you played against many man-to-man systems?
Not many. I remember specifically there was a game last year against a man-to-man system in the middle of the field, and it requires a lot of work. It definitely requires a lot of work.
On their part or your part or both?
Well, both. I mean, because they've got to do, and obviously it depends on who's in the middle of the field as well, but they've got to do the running to, follow a guy. And then for us, if we want to get on the ball, especially as a team who wants to play and have possession of it, we've got to do a lot of moving around to try to lose our guys and to try to create, as much space for us as possible. So it definitely, makes it a more high intensity, high energy game. And it's a lot on the legs for sure.
How about
just jump in there, Chris? Sorry. Just a question, Drake, because you said you've played against a man-to-man system. So, especially in midfield, what do you have to do, or how do you then create space for yourself, or, does it just descend into the ball getting turned over many times? Does it become like a game where you can't really have a lot of possession?
It's a little bit of a mix of both. I think, when I think back to the game, we, for me, trying to create little spaces, it's just little changes of pace to try to create a little bit of separation, because at the end of the day, you're not going to have, 10, 15 yards of space. It's going to be, 5 yards, 3 yards, whatever the case may be. So just trying to sort that out and figure that out so that you can get, touches on the ball and hope to look forward. And then obviously, at times it is going to require that the ball's probably going to be, going long a little bit more than you'd like. And you probably have to pick up a lot more second balls and try to play from there. So, you're going to have to mix it up a bit, but there are ways to try to get around it and just, play quicker and different stuff like that.
Dre, what was your take on Everton's midfield? How did they do from your perspective?
They were okay. It's tough against a team like Leeds, obviously, because they play like that. So you don't expect entirely too much from them. But I've liked the midfield so far from Everton over the games that they've played. I enjoy watching them play. I think they've came together quite well. So I don't really look at one individual game and judge them from there. But I think it was okay, just average really.
Harshal, what's your sense of how Everton's going to fare in the coming weeks? Are they, they started out really strong. I do think that Leeds tends to do really well against mid-block teams. But what's your prognosis going forward for Everton?
It really depends on, a few key players getting fit for them, because you got to remember this game, they played with a back three, but then the wing backs were two central midfielders. Alex Iwobi was on the left and Tom Davies was on the right. And they both got changed. Ancelotti subbed both of them. He brought on Fabian Delph to play at left wing back, and I can't remember who it was who came on to play at right wing back, although I think they might have changed and gone to a 4 by then. But they don't have Seamus Coleman. They don't have Luca Digne is out for a couple of months apparently with a knee injury, and he's had surgery. So the thing is, again, with the way that Everton were playing, their fullbacks were really critical, especially on the left, because Digne, Richarlison, and then James coming in from the right and playing the passes out to them was becoming a really good area of chance creation for them. That's not going to be available. So I think they still are a pretty good side. They've got a really good striker up front. Richarlison is obviously very dangerous. And that midfield, as Ray said, looks like it's settling in. In this game, for example, in the first half especially, I thought Doucouré made a couple of really good runs late into the box where he couldn't capitalize. But that sort of energy that they've managed to get into the box, and then Allen is there to sort of be the defensive screen. So the raw materials are there, but I think Ancelotti needs a few of the guys to come back, or maybe to find a different solution at fullback. And I think where they are in the table right now, they're 7th. I think that is going to be where they end up, about maybe 7th to 10th, 11th, maybe. That's going to be their natural habitat.
Very good. Let's turn our attention to the Liverpool-Brighton match, which was a 1-1 outcome. Liverpool was banging on the door for most of the game. They got their goal, and then in the 90-something minute, there was a PK. And the unluckiest team in the league got a little lucky with what Welbeck, their striker, later said was a soft penalty, and he was happy to take it and move on. What's your sense of that game, Harshal?
I think Brighton fans could have been forgiven for thinking that their unlucky streak was going to continue, because Aaron Connolly missed a 1-on-1 early in the first half when he went through. I think there was another one that was missed, I think, by Maupay, and then obviously Neil Maupay missed the penalty as well, which they got earlier in the game. And within 10 minutes of that, he went off with an injury. So I believe Adam Lallana came on and went off within 15 minutes with an injury. So he had to be subbed as well. So it seemed as if everything was going against them, but they obviously picked up the late penalty and Gross scored it. They got the point. But I thought it was interesting that Brighton were able to exploit Liverpool's high line, especially in the first half. And Klopp sort of alluded to that in his post-match interview as well, where he said that we didn't drop at the right time. Because we were playing a high line, you either have to cut out the pass or you drop. And we didn't do either. And they had a couple of chances, but the keeper did well there. So that's an area where maybe teams can look to exploit against Liverpool, especially because they're playing with an unfamiliar backline, right? Because they have so many players out injured. Those guys probably haven't really played too much with each other than on the training ground the previous week. So being able to maybe catch out Liverpool's high line with those sort of passes and those runs is something which I think opposition teams can look at in the next few weeks.
Dre, help us unpack the next game, Arsenal-Wolves, which unfortunately was marred by some terrible head injuries fairly early in the first half. What happened in the game?
Well, first and foremost, I hope Jimenez is okay. I mean, you never like to see that. I saw he had a fractured skull, so I hope his recovery goes well. But Arsenal struggling. Arsenal deeply struggling. I mean, I think they did manage to create a few chances, on in the second half to potentially get a goal back. But I mean, we talk about their creativity a lot, and I think that's going to be a big thing for them. I think they're gonna struggle there. But we also thought that defensively they were a little bit more solid under Arteta with the back three. He's gone to a back four this game, which I found that to be interesting. I think he's done it the last 2 or 3 games, maybe something like that. Yeah. So I'm interested in what his reasoning for that is, and they concede 2 goals. I mean, Wolves, fair play to them. Wolves did well. They're always dangerous on the counter attack. They have lots of pace, and specifically in Traore, and he's a handful, and he's involved in both goals obviously, and it's tough to see from an Arsenal perspective, but at the end of the day, I think we just have to accept that they're struggling this year, and it's probably going to continue to go on like this.
Harshal, what's your take on the match?
Yeah, as Jay said, Arsenal really are struggling. This game more than any other game reminded me of the worst of what we saw last year under Emery. It was really, a throwback to that, and not in a good way, obviously. I'll talk a little bit more about Arsenal in a bit, but again, Wolves, they've played a back four again. And we've spoken about this. They've exclusively played a back three under Nuno for the last 2 and a bit seasons, and in the last 2 games they've played with a back four. It was a 4-2-3-1 this time around, and they played it really well. They actually had a bunch of chances. Traore on the right when he gets going, it's almost impossible to stop him. He had a big role in both goals. I thought the goal that Podence scored, if you've seen that goal, the scoop he does to get the ball, when the ball comes into the box, he does a really, it's a brilliant bit of skill where he does a scoop over the Arsenal defender who's sliding in, and that leaves him with an empty net to tap into, right? So Pedro Neto, Podence, Traore, they all had brilliant games. Moutinho was brilliant as the sort of defensive screener in front of the back four. And it didn't look like Wolves haven't played this system for 2.5 years. It looked like they've been playing it week in, week out. So that will be a very good sign for Nuno. And it looks like it's another sort of tactical string he's added to his bow, right? Because up until now, you just need to look at the team sheet and you'll know whether they're playing a 3-4-3 or a 3-5-2. But that's going to change from now on. With regard to Arsenal, we've spoken about this so many times. There's just so much of a lack of creativity. And there's one stat I want to pull out here to illustrate that. And that's the number of passes that Arsenal, teams in the Premier League take per shot. So it's literally, as the name says, total number of passes divided by total number of shots taken in the league. Arsenal, on average, are making 52 passes for every shot that they've taken in the league. And it's the highest by a huge margin. Just for comparison, Man City are making 34 passes per shot. Man United are making 39. Chelsea are making 42. Liverpool are making 40. Tottenham are making 43. So they're all in the low, high 30s, low 40s. Arsenal are on a league of their own with 52 passes per shot, So that basically tells you that they're not being able to create chances. They're just passing the ball around for possession's sake, but the final ball isn't there. That bit of verticality that you need, or someone to play that clinical pass isn't there, and they're going to struggle, I think, as long as they can't get that into the team, because Aubameyang again looked completely isolated, didn't have a lot of support, and
He's begging for chances up there.
I mean, again, there's a stat that was doing the rounds. It's been 10 games for Arsenal, I believe, in the league. Aubameyang's XG from 10 games in total is 1.84 or something like that. That's ridiculous. He has an XG of less than 2 from 10 games in the league. He's just not got into positions to be able to take shots. And that's basically the problem in a nutshell for Arsenal.
So my take is, first of all, I want to chat just a bit about Wolves because they deserve some love. They are third or fourth in the league in terms of goals allowed. They're very parsimonious about allowing goals. They're tied for 16th for number of goals that they've scored. So you want to call it luck. You want to talk about whether the manager is really cagey about managing matches. But I am very impressed that Wolves, without Jota, with Doherty's departure, and frankly, their replacements not completely bedding in a meaningful way yet, that they're sixth in the league. And that to me is just really great to see a small run, smaller budget club like that can take care of business. You know, that the magic sauce still seems to be working even after several years.
I mean, Chris, it's a little relative. You say small run, they spent, I think, close to 80 odd million in the summer, and they've been spending hugely. They're backed by a Chinese conglomerate. So, I mean, I get what you're saying, but it's not like they're a small club by any means. They have a lot of money.
I think that's fair to say, Harshal, but there's the billionaires club and there's the 100 millionaires club. And,
yeah.
You know, you don't think of Wolves being able to stick it to kind of Big Six, and even formerly known as Big Six, like Arsenal is. So, and just kind of getting my sense on Arsenal, I'm not going to pile on because it's just, we need to have a mercy rule here. But there are all these stats that are coming out about how Arteta has got a pretty similar record to managers before him, right? And rankings are where they are right here. And you just really wonder. I think in terms of a clear style of play, it's there. I just feel like Arteta's candidly needs to be given more time to build his box of toys, if you will, because I still feel like the players aren't quite working for Arsenal. And you can't fix that in one transfer window or even two. And I'm just hopeful that the generally grumpy Arsenal fans give Arteta a little more time to build things in his own vision. So we'll kind of see. You hear things about he's over coaching his players and things like that. And, you know, I don't know if that really is the case when you're trying to really change systems over. Dre, any sense of overcoaching versus undercoaching? Are those myths that pundits come up with, or do players generally feel that as well?
No, I mean, there are definitely, more hands-on coaches who will literally tell you the next pass that they want you to make. And that's, as a player, whether you can tune it out or not, at the end of the day, if you're not doing what the manager asks for you, what he wants, then you're probably not going to play. So obviously you want to put yourself in a position to be on the field, and you end up kind of feeling like you're not really playing your game if you're, literally being controlled, like it's FIFA kind of, So there's that aspect of it. But I mean, I think in the situation he's come into, where he's trying to implement a new system and he's trying to lay the foundation, essentially, I think it's going to require a bit of that sometimes, in terms of, hey, in certain situations, this is what I want, this is what I think is going to work, until that's built and until there's an understanding, and then you kind of go from there. I agree that it's probably going to take some time, especially if he's changing up everything and he's bringing in his own ideas. The only thing though is that it's, this is their worst start, I think, in history through 10 games. So it's definitely something that people are looking at, and they're starting to raise questions and wonder what's going on, because I mean, in my years of supporting Arsenal, I've never seen anything like it. So it's definitely a shock. It's a shock to the system. But for me personally, I mean, I'm willing to wait and see how it goes, and see if he can get a few more players that he wants, and go from there. So hopefully some things can turn around.
I hope the fans give him some more runway. I do think that Thursday, Sunday matches going off to Europe just doesn't have a lot of time to get some legit practices in, right? You put in 2 recovery days, and then 1 prep. There's just not enough days in the week to kind of go through the system in the depth that I imagine he'd want to.
Yeah, it's tough.
So let's turn our attention, just what's going on in terms of Champions League fixtures for the Premier League teams this week, Trey.
Yeah, so in Champions League and Europa League, all the teams are pretty solid in their groups right now. I think just Liverpool needs to get points from one of their next 2 games to be solid. I think Tottenham needs points from one of the next 2 games, but other than that, all the teams are, I wouldn't say surprisingly doing well, but when you look at their league form of, the teams like Man City and Man United especially in a group with Leipzig and PSG, they're flying. So yeah, it's good to see that the Premier League teams are having success in Europe.
Yeah, it seems like fairly uneventful. You would think the Premier League would do well. So it's going to be a bit of travel depending on which team you are. I think the work rates are fairly significant. Just to kind of get back to the Premier League, Newcastle ended up winning 2-0 against Crystal Palace. That was a solid win for a mid-table clash. Man City finally found its goal creating mojo over Burnley, 5-0. So look forward to seeing if Man City rights the ship in terms of being able to create those opportunities. West Brom was able to beat Sheffield United, who have really, really been struggling. 1 point in the last 10 games. That's a milestone you really don't want to achieve. Fulham had a surprise upset beating Leicester City. So, Harshal, any notes you want to give on any of those matches?
Couple of quick ones. City looked better than they have. They looked quicker. The passing was a higher tempo. It was a lot more one touch than sort of City not hogging the ball, but taking more time, which allows teams to get set in their defensive block. I think one of the key things was that Mendy played at left back, which gave them natural width on that side. He obviously came in and scored a goal as well, which was his first City goal. And just because he held the width on the left, that allowed the likes of Ferran Torres and Mahrez to come inside and play in those spaces. Mahrez, I thought, was brilliant on the day, got a hat-trick. Kevin De Bruyne looked fresh, and he laid on 3. I think he laid on 3 assists. So that bodes well for City, that they were able to. And although, obviously it's Burnley. They've lost 5-0 on the last 4 games. I think they've played at the Etihad. So it's not really that much of a marker, but it's still a good thing for Pep. And Sheffield United, like you mentioned, this game I thought they were supremely unlucky. They notched up the highest XG of any team in the last 5 years in the Premier League without scoring a goal. I think it was, I don't remember the exact figure. I think it was around 3, if I'm not mistaken, 2.84 or 3 or something around that, around those lines. And they didn't score a goal. So that, I think they were really unlucky in this game, but that's becoming a bit of a feature with Sheffield United, that either they're not creating chances, or the few occasions when they do create chances, they're not taking them, but they're continuing to leak goals. So Chris Wilder, maybe in the way that Nuno has gone to a back four, maybe he could consider a change of system, because this is again something that Sheffield United have been playing consistently under Wilder ever since he's been manager, back in the Championship, and even back in League One. So maybe a change of formations needed, some sort of a change of approach is needed, because they really need to find something there.
Very good. Well, let's go ahead and preview some of Week 11's matches. Man United versus West Ham. Dre, what's your first take on this matchup?
Honestly, I expect it to be a bit of a routine win for Manchester United. I think I'm hoping that they're starting to find their form a little bit, and they're starting to come together and gel. I mean, we were talking about the cohesiveness in the midfield now. So for me, I expect them to win comfortably. Maybe 2-3-0.
2-3-0. How about you, Harshal?
I don't think it'll be that comfortable, because West Ham have actually looked quite solid defensively under Moyes over the last 4 or 5 games. They've gone to a back 3, and it's laying a pretty solid platform, and then they're actually going out and scoring goals as well. So it could actually be a bit tougher than it has been for United to create chances. So although, I mean, I do expect United's individual quality to come through, so I'd go for maybe a 3-1 win to United. But I think it'll be a game that'll be decided late on, like this one was, where maybe United, it's 1-1, and then last 20 minutes United score 2 goals or something like that.
Yeah, I have a little different take. I think West Ham, they have the second stingiest defense, or tied for second in the league with only 10 goals scored. I think MANU still not quite got its mojo. I think it's going to be a 2-1 result. I'm just not sure who's going to have the 2 and who's going to have the 1. Just to make things interesting, I'm going to go for West Ham upsetting 2-1 in this game here. How about, Harshal, unpacking the Chelsea-Leeds match? What can we expect from this one?
It's at Stamford Bridge. Although, I mean, I don't know how much home advantage counts for without fans, but this could be a game where, again, we've said this multiple times, Leeds are just so much fun to watch. So I think this is again going to be one of the games of the weekend next week. But it could be a tricky one for Chelsea, again, because Leeds are such a high energy team, and Chelsea at times have struggled with playing it out of the back, and that's again something that Leeds can capitalize on with their pressing, with the midfield running as well. I spoke about Click early on, and he could, again, if the likes of Kovacic don't track his runs, or I mean, if he does go into an area where there's too much for Kante to do at the base of midfield, that could then again create a chance for the likes of Jack Harrison, Rafinha, or even Bamford up front, right? So, of course, Chelsea also do have the quality to punish Leeds on the other end. So, I think it could be the absolute opposite of the Chelsea Spurs game from this weekend, where it was so drab and dull. This could be supremely entertaining, high energy, and I think it'll probably be a 2-2 draw.
2-2 draw. Okay,
yeah.
Trey, how about your take?
Yeah, that's actually what I was thinking as well. I think it'll be a very entertaining game. I'm just looking at Chelsea kind of struggling to play out the back a little bit as well, and with the Leeds press, I think that they can create chances from there. And obviously, we've seen Chelsea going forward; they have a lot of attacking options. So I'm hoping there will be goals in the game, and I think 2-2 is a fair result.
I hate to sound a little boring, but I think it's going to be 2-1, and I want to call for another potential upset on this one, largely because Leeds is a box of chocolates. You don't know if you're biting into caramel or jalapeno, right? You just don't know what you're going to get. But I guess what I'll do is I'll go with 2-1 Leeds just to keep it spicy. So we'll see how that game goes. Tottenham Arsenal. Dre, what's your take on what should we look for in that game? Any surprises to consider?
I'm interested to see how both teams line up. I think we've seen Arsenal against, I mean, I say the big six. I don't know if I really include Tottenham in that, but we've seen Arsenal kind of be a little bit more defensive and try to be a little bit more resilient in their approach and kind of catch teams on the counter attack. And then we've seen that from Tottenham in the last couple of games as well. So I think it'll be interesting to see kind of who dominates the ball and go from there. But at the end of the day, I think Tottenham's going to win the game, maybe 2-1.
2-1 Tottenham. Harshal?
Harshal smiles when I said that.
Nah, the reason I'm smiling is because it's rare. It's really rare for an Arsenal fan to say that before a North London derby. But I mean, that just sums up the state of the mood that's around Arsenal at the moment, right? Because, I think, as Dre said, it's like, based on current form and all of that, it's likely that that Spurs will win the game. But I am hoping for something from Arteta in this game. You know, something where you see something different in terms of an approach or in terms of the lineup that he puts out, or just even if it's the same lineup. Just, I think there was a loss. There's not the intensity isn't there as well. And I know these are sort of, you know, concepts rather than sort of actual things you can drill into players, but he does need to find a way for Arsenal to play with a lot more intensity than they're doing at the moment. And then the creativity that we spoke about, which is non-existent. So who he brings in to help that out, I don't know, but they do need to find some sort of service for Aubameyang, because if they can do that, Spurs, I thought, did look a little vulnerable against Chelsea. Joe Rodon, who made his full Premier League debut, had 2 or 3 hairy moments, right? So he will need to play again, I think, because Alderweireld is still out. So there are a few chinks which they can exploit if they have the right players. So I don't know. I'm hoping for something from Arteta, but in terms of a scoreline, I'll go with the same that Dre said, you know, maybe 2-1 to Spurs.
I hope Arsenal puts egos aside, and I don't even know if Ozil is on the squad or not.
No, he's not. That's the thing.
Yeah.
I would love to see Ozil and Partey just line up together and give them 3 or 4 matches just to kind of work out the creativity element of it. You know, I know the betting world has got Tottenham as pretty significant favorites for this game. I'm going to be inclined to agree with y'all. I think it's probably going to be closer to a 2-0 match. I just don't know if Arsenal has the punch to make things happen. I see some youngsters that are going to be awesome in a couple of years. There's some connective tissue that's just missing, and I don't have the gray matter to figure out how to get that connectivity going, except for a few weeks of solid practice time, and they're just not going to get that really until January or February. So I'm hoping the patience of Arsenal fans hold until that time. Liverpool Wolves. Harshal, what's your take on that game?
Yeah, the Jota reunion for the Wolves fans, but I mean, over the last 2 or 3 games, it really looks like they're not missing him. And obviously that's, as I said, over the last 2 or 3 games, because he's been banging in the goals for Liverpool. He did so against Brighton as well, right? So I think it's been really interesting to see how Nuno's managed to get Wolves to change to a completely different shape over the last 2 games without a lot. You know, it hasn't looked like they've needed too much effort to do that. They've almost seamlessly playing new roles and a new formation. So I'm interested to see if he sticks to that against Liverpool. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes back to a back 3 and what he knows and what Wolves have played for the majority of their time in the Premier League against a team like Liverpool. So that I'm interested to see if he sticks to a back 4 or plays a back 3. But it's just Liverpool look like a bit of a machine at the moment, in the sense that they're getting the results. I know they did drop 2 points against Brighton, but they didn't lose, and they're still winning the games, you know, even though they might have players out injured. They obviously, James Milner went off injured against Brighton as well, so there's again that question of whether he'll be fit for the weekend. But they're finding a way. They're just finding a way. So I think it'll be Liverpool, 2-1 to Liverpool.
2-1 Liverpool. How about you, Joey?
I think 1-0. I think Wolves has been struggling to score a bit, and I think that's gonna continue. So I think 1-0 Liverpool, maybe even 2.
I think it's going to be 1-0 or possibly 2-0. Probably a little more comfortable with 2-0. I think Wolves are going to miss Jimenez tremendously, and Traore is performing some absolute magic, but he is in an ensemble where they're just the other players are still just a bit young. So time will tell. I like Liverpool's chances very much about grinding out the wins. Harshal, I like your point. They're not winning every battle, but they're certainly winning the war over time, despite significant casualties. Well, gentlemen, why don't we leave it there? Thank you so much for your time. We are sponsored by the Premier League Guide, a 300-page guide of the season created by a team of 15-plus writers and designers. Moneyball for football, analytics plus opposition analysis plus eye candy. The next update will be released on December 5th at www.thinkingfanmedia.com and on Amazon. Join us next week for another podcast for thinking fans. For now, bella ciao, ciao ciao.